talking into a lapel mic. Is this something people do anymore? Remember it was like a thing for a minute there. Kind of scratch your nose with it. Get a little. Anyways, if you like that kind of grossness, you'll love Evil Dead Rise. So what's up, y'all? My name's Jeremy. I'm the pop culture nihilist, and I went and saw Evil Dead Rise yesterday. Let's see. This was an anticipated movie for me. I thought the trailers were really good. Though it did end up showing way too much in the trailers. But, leading up to it, I kept seeing the trailer, and I'm like, man, this looks like hardcore, right? This is some dark shit that mommy's with the maggots now. I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. Kids in peril? This is going to be wild. This is going to be the first time since Sam Raimi's original movie that the thing has felt so subversive. Like, don't get me wrong, the 2013 movie was dark, but it happened to be made after a whole slew of, like, torture porn movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it more gory than Hostel? Yeah, probably. But, like, Saw and Hostel and all that shit was kind of the norm, a decade predating that. So it didn't seem all as extreme as I'm sure the first Evil Dead did. In fact, the first Evil Dead, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here. The first Evil Dead was so subversive in the eyes of the British government that it ended up getting put onto the video nasties list. And it was a good thing for the movie, too, because I feel like a lot of the movies that ended up on that list, despite whether they were, like, great or not, they had a level of mystique to them, and people wanted to search them out, and people are like, oh, my God, have you seen Cannibal Holocaust? Oh, my God, have you seen, Evil Dead was one of them, Fulci's Zombie. The list was long, and there were a lot of movies on there, and it kind of put them into a category of extreme cinema where people almost took it like a rite of passage to watch these movies. So these days it's hard to get that kind of notoriety because, we've kind of seen it all at this point. I mean, those movies walked in the 1970s so that movies like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer could run in the 90s, and then I don't know, more recently, something like a Nicholas Winding Refn movie. Those get pretty gnarly at times, right? Evil Dead, the remake, certainly. But when I saw the trailers for this new one, I thought, like, wow, this is kind of trying to get to that level of subversiveness where you're actually maybe offending the public. And that's fun. But is that enough to make a good movie? Well, let's discuss a little bit further. I went and saw the movie Megan. All this does tie into my review, I promise. I went and saw the movie Megan a couple months back, and there was a bunch of kids in the movie, I guess because it was like a TikTok doll, you know what I mean? That a lot of people thought they could take their children to it. Plus it was rated PG-13, kind of a safe horror movie, maybe like a gateway horror movie for preteen girls or whatever. But there was this one mother and her daughter sitting in the row behind me. And the daughter was, I don't know, kid age, you know what I mean? Somewhere between 6 and 16. Nah, the kid was probably like, I don't know, 6 to 8, maybe something, maybe 5 to 8. And she happened to see the trailer for Evil Dead Rise. I think it wasn't the red band, right? Because it was a PG-13 movie, but she saw the trailer to Evil Dead Rise, and rightfully so. She had a meltdown. She was like crying, got down on the floor, was screaming, begging to leave. And her mom's kind of like, shut up, kid. We're going to watch this movie. It reminded me of the 80s, back when we were just able to watch anything. Parents didn't give a shit. We were latchkey kids. They're just like, whatever. As long as you're in the front of the TV, I know you're not out there scrambling your brain on drugs, right? Dare commercials and shit. You know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you don't. maybe you don't, which is fine too. I'm not ageist, right? I just want you to know that about me. So anyways, the girl melted down, and it, again, reinforced this idea of, man, this movie's going to be brutal. I know I made the comment to people, it looked mean-spirited. What did I mean by that? Well, there's just something about, the Deadite, where its whole kind of goal is to mutilate the host, to destroy and deface the host, and also to psychologically torment the people who, are close with the victim. And that's always kind of been the thing. It's like, if you love this person, you're going to have to watch them, mutilate themselves, and eventually you're going to have to dismember them. Damn, that's pretty rough. It's even more rough when the deadite is your mother, right? That's as dark as it could possibly be. And that's kind of the premise of this movie. Instead of being a group of 20-somethings out in a cabin in the woods, it's a group that's made up of a family. It's a mother, her sister, and the mother's 3 children, aged, aged 8 to 16 or something like that. And they're in this apartment complex when all of a sudden, the Book of the Dead is revealed. It's dabbled with, and bad shit commences. It's an Evil Dead movie, so you kind of know what you're getting. You just plug in a family, which it's like weird to see Amblin, almost like an Amblin movie with the children in peril, but taken to the extreme of something like the original Evil Dead movie. It's kind of wild, right? And that in itself is probably going to be a big enough novelty for many people, but to me, it didn't really enhance the movie, but there was an element of like, oh shit, they're really going to go there. That's wild. That's a big swing. There was a couple that got up and walked out, so I guess it was effective in that way. Either that or they were bored. I don't know. It's hard to say. So I went and saw it during the daytime. It was like, it was a 1:45 showing, and I'll be the first to admit, the atmosphere or the environment in which you watch a movie is going to greatly affect the way that you experience it. And so going at 1:45 in the afternoon, I will say, probably dulled a little bit of the excitement of both myself and the audience. I probably should have went on Thursday opening night with the most enthusiastic audience. I probably would have had a bit more fun with it had I done that. Though, talking about Meg a moment ago, or Megan, not Meg, the shark movie, no, Megan, I went and saw it during the afternoon, and I thought it was effective. I thought it was fine. I'm not saying Evil Dead Rise is not as good as Megan. I had high hopes for Evil Dead Rise. It opens up very traditionally in the cabin, and there's a group of teenagers there, and one of them gets possessed, leads to this whole like opening sequence that's essentially an abridged version of one of the other movies. It covers all the same bases, just within a couple minutes before the title card comes up on screen, and I thought it was effective. It was exactly what it needed to be. And then one day earlier, we cut to this apartment complex with this family, and we get to spend enough time with them to kind of establish them as characters and maybe build a little bit of a connection with them. I will say the performers that played these characters, they were good. Like, a bad child actor will absolutely derail a movie fast. And it's hard to find a good child actor. They're children. They don't have a lot of experience, right? But the 3 that were cast in this film, I thought all did a solid enough job. Like, they were all good. The sisters were really good. But the standout to me was the mother who played the lead deadite. I think the director of this was a person named Lee Cronin. I think the last movie he did was Behind the Tall Grass or something like that. The scary movie about grass. I think that's right. I'm not going to look it up. I could, but I'm not going to. And I'll tell you, Lee Cronin, he's no Fede Alvarez, right? I thought the 2013 movie actually ended up exceeding my expectations. Evil Dead Rise ended up falling a little short of my expectations. And again, I'll acknowledge expectations are a significant factor in the way that you walk out of a movie feeling about it. I saw all these high reviews on Rotten Tomatoes about how good Evil Dead Rise is, and it seems like a lot of like horror movie content creators, they really dug it, Creators that I like, like I've seen a couple of their videos, and I'm into their stuff and their take on things. But I was surprised to see how many people were like, thumbs up, dude. Because I'm like more like thumbs middle on it. I don't know. I guess your mileage will vary, but I guess just, if it's brutal and it's an Evil Dead movie, then that's good enough, right? And that's fair. I mean, it was competently made. Though I will say there was some weird editing in it. Like, some weird editing. I can explain a couple of the scenes vaguely, but, like, there would be a scene where two characters are trapped in a room with a deadite. And then the next shot, those same two characters are in the living room, and the deadite's, like, not pursuing them. It's just, like, in the other room. And then there's some, like, logical inconsistencies where, like, you've just now seen how this evil spirit can overtake people. Why are you going to go in a bedroom by yourself and put on headphones to listen to the album? It's a weird choice. There's just weird choices throughout that you're like, I understand characters have to be a certain level of stupid in order for horror movies to work, right? Like, if every choice they make is the right one, then it becomes very hard to, mind suspense. Like, if the fucker doesn't go down into the basement, you don't get the scare at the end of the staircase kind of situation. So I get it, but these days you have to try to find a reason to justify, at least try to find a reason to justify why the characters behave the way that they do. In this movie, it's just one stupid fucking decision after another from characters that we're supposed to see as, like, semi-intelligent, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely brutal. It's definitely brutal. There's this, like at the end of the first one, there was the abomination, which was essentially just like a shadow self of Jane Levy's character. It's like all covered in flesh or whatever. In this one, they do something real nasty. It's real nasty. Did I tell you all this is spoilers? I'll put it in the title of the video. So, like, one of the first lines that the deadite said is, I had a dream about a day. It was so beautiful, and all I could think was I wanted to cut you all open and put you inside me so that we could stay a happy family forever, something like that. And at the end of the movie, like, the kids at this point, 2 out of 3 are, like, turned into deadites, and they, like, can join with the mother by, like, intertwining their flesh by, like, ripping holes in each other and turn into this, like, big fleshy kind of Lovecraftian mass. Kind of reminded me of something out of The Thing or something. But it didn't seem like a more effective killing machine. It's just disgusting, but, like, it's got to be hard to walk around like that. Like, whatever form that was, it seems being agile and shit, like jumping up onto the ceiling like a lot of the deadites are able to do. That seems tough. So I didn't think it, like, optimized this thing's killing abilities. But, it's really neither here nor there. Like I said, the acting was good. The editing was weird. And I think the reason why is this movie comes in at a brisk 90-minute runtime. 90 minutes flat. And I feel like there was some aggressive editing going on that would just indiscriminately chop out minutes of the movie. And it just didn't really work all that well as far as the pacing. A lot of people said it was relentless, but I never got to a point, like, despite the fact that it's kids in trouble and that there's all this horrific violence happening, I never cared that much, Like, you kind of know there's an inevitability about what's going to happen, so, like, it was hard for my pulse to, like, rise to it. I'm just like, okay. This is the status quo. This is what's supposed to happen. And it didn't really elevate the characters to a place that I, like, gave that much of a shit. And I'll also say, even though it was in an apartment building, it was pretty much still a chamber piece, as in there wasn't a lot of, like, extras or big set pieces involving the apartment. I mean, there was an elevator scene, there were a couple of neighbors that were sprinkled in, but it didn't feel like the apartment complex setting was really capitalized on. I mean, according to me, right? Like, you probably have your own feelings about this movie, and I respect them. Right? Just respect my opinion. I hate to be negative on it, because I went in wanting to like it. Now, like, speak of expectations, like, Bo is afraid It's also out in the theaters. I love Ari Aster. The reviews have been very middling, to say the least. Not that the reviews are the end-all be-all, but I kind of use them to gauge the enthusiasm of the audience. And it's like real middle of the road. So I'm hoping, because I have lower expectations, that the movie ends up exceeding my expectations. Because the fact is, Beau is Afraid has got way lower score than Evil Dead Rise does. But yeah, I don't know. It's a horror movie at the theaters, and it's a remake, and it's not the worst remake. And, you know, there's a lot of horror movies that are probably not near as competently made that I enjoy just fine. So it just depends on what you're after. But as far as recapturing what Sam Raimi did with the original film and making something truly subversive, in some ways I think they succeeded in that. I don't think it's going to go down in history as being like a great cult film, but very few movies are. I think it was made for $15 million and was meant to go directly to streaming. So financially, this was a great choice, though I was talking to my friend and he had mentioned, you know, maybe this would have hit different for you had you have just come across it on streaming. And I think that's a valid critique. I think that if I would have just seen it at home, maybe at nighttime, then I probably would have been less disappointed by it. Something I was curious about, I know I'm just kind of jumping all over the place, but are they going to lean into the humor that the franchise was known for, or were they going to go straight for the horror, kind of in the same way that the 2013 film did? And it got me thinking about that first Evil Dead. Like, people swear it's a dark comedy, and Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell have even kind of gone back and forth over the years as to whether it was intentionally humorous or not. I suspect that a lot of the humor was derived from the presentation, because it was such a low-budget movie, right? That some of the gore and the practical effects, they just came off as hokey. And there were a lot of movies that you would see in the theaters where audiences would kind of laugh instead of scream. They talk to the movie, all those kind of things. And those movies would often go on to be hits, you know? Like The Room, Tommy Wiseau swore that he was making a comedy after the fact. But when you watch it, you're like, I don't know, dude. Kind of seems like you were trying to be serious. But after the reception of Evil Dead, Sam Raimi realized that there was this campiness and this hokiness that people were enjoying about it, and he dialed that up, like, exponentially. I think that's why Evil Dead 2 is kind of a better movie than the first one. Well, it's definitely a better movie than the first one, and it established that tone that people associate with the original Evil Dead trilogy. And the new one, it had some definite dark humor moments in it, but it didn't go silly like Ash vs. Evil Dead. And I actually think the tone was pretty spot on. There's a couple claptrap moments in it that I know that probably like is the reason why a lot of, you know, fans loved it. At one point, the character says, "Come get some," you know, and you know that's just like a claptrap moment. And a bunch of the Deadites are screaming, "Dead by dawn, dead by dawn." So you're like, oh, it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. You know what I'm talking about? I recognize that thing. Yeah, and that's kind of remakes in a nutshell. I recognize that thing. And if you are the kind of person that likes to recognize that thing, then you'll probably like the Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise. Yeah, that's what I meant. On a scale of 1 to 5, I am going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts, though. What did you think about the movie, if you've seen it? If you didn't, what do you think about going to see it? I don't know. Let's have a conversation down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, take a second, click that thumbs up button right there. It really helps out, I guess. And until next time, I'm Jeremy. Be terrible. Peace.